The bar on the edge of the neutral zone was notorious, its name an unpronounceable mix of clicks, growls, and hums. Humans, with typical ingenuity, simply called it the crater. Due to the fact that the establishment was located in what was quite literally the fused remains of a meteor impact site. The crater's reputation thrived not on its hospitality or drinks, but on a single unsaid rule: enter only if you're ready to leave a piece of yourself behind, metaphorically or physically. A soft chime sounded as a pair of humans stepped through the reinforced hatch, drawing the wary gazes of patrons scattered around the dimly lit interior. The taller of the two, broad-shouldered with unruly black hair, paused, his sharp eyes scanning the room. His companion, a lean woman with auburn hair tied back into a tight braid, offered him a tight-lipped smile. "So this is what intergalactic diplomacy looks like," she muttered. "Looks more like the prelude to a bar fight," he replied. "Let's keep it civil, though. For once." The crowd's eyes lingered, some narrowing with suspicion while others darted away in feigned disinterest, before the room slowly returned to its drinks and murmur of conversations. Well, most of them did. A hulking, reptilian form near the far wall remained locked on the humans, its slit pupil gaze unblinking. "Captain Jensen, Lieutenant Rhea," a voice called from a table in the corner. It belonged to a species that looked like a cross between a humanoid jellyfish and a spider. Ambassador Nicola of the Zixan Alliance raised an appendage in greeting. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." The humans weaved their way through the room, stepping carefully around tails, appendages, and the occasional puddle of substances best left unidentified. Jensen gestured for Rhea to take the seat facing the entrance, a subtle but deliberate choice that didn't go unnoticed by the ambassador. "The crater doesn't exactly scream neutral ground," Jensen said, folding himself into a chair designed for a species half his size. "But I'm guessing that's part of the charm. Neutrality here is not dictated by law, but by mutual fear of escalation," Nicola replied, his translucent skin briefly flickering a pale orange as he observed their reactions, the faint hum of his vocal cords resonating in the quiet tension. "A principle your species understands better than most, it seems." Rhea tilted her head, her expression carefully neutral. "You asked for us specifically. Something about a delicate matter requiring unconventional diplomacy." Nicola's translucent skin pulsed with shifting colors, a Zixan equivalent of a frown. "The matter is delicate because it concerns the Karkosan Sovereignty." The room seemed to grow quieter at the mention of the name, though it might have been their imagination. The Karkosans were infamous even by galactic standards, a warrior species from a death world so brutal that few dared to set foot there, no matter the reward. Their entire culture revolved around strength, dominance, and an almost pathological disdain for compromise. "They've issued a challenge," Nicola continued, his voice a low hum. "A demand, really. They wish to test the resolve of humanity. Failure to meet their expectations would complicate relations across the neutral zone." "Test our resolve?" Jensen's voice carried a note of incredulity. "That's vague, even for them. What exactly are they asking for?" "A duel," Nicola said, his voice dropping even further. "But not one of combat. They've requested a test of endurance, ingenuity, and stubbornness," Rhea finished, her lips quirking into a faint smile. "Classic Deathworlder traits. They want to see if we live up to the hype." Nicola's colors shifted again, a mix of frustration and resignation. "Precisely. The challenge will be held in 3 days, aboard their flagship. They have not disclosed the nature of the test, but they've made it clear that failure would be unacceptable." Jensen leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. "Unacceptable how? Trade sanctions? Territorial disputes? Or something more immediate?" Nicola hesitated, his appendages twitching. "The Karkosans have a saying, a weak ally is a blade turned inward. If humanity fails to prove itself, they may decide that an alliance with your species is not worth the risk." The weight of the statement hung in the air. Humanity's reputation as a rising power in the galactic community was still tenuous, built as much on curiosity and novelty as on respect. A public failure here would shatter humanity's fragile standing, undoing years of hard-won trust and painting them as a species unworthy of respect. "So they want us to dance to their tune," Jensen said, his tone grim. And if we refuse? Refusal would be interpreted as cowardice, Nicola replied. An even worse outcome, I assure you. Rhea's eyes narrowed. Sounds like they're setting us up to fail. If we don't know what the challenge is, how can we prepare? That is why I called upon you, Nicola said, his gaze shifting between them. Your species has a reputation for unpredictability. I suspect the Karkosans are expecting you to surprise them. Jensen exhaled slowly, his mind already working through the possibilities. All right. We'll do it. But on one condition. Nicola's appendages twitched again. Name it. We're going to need more information about the Karkosans. Not just their culture, but their weaknesses. Anything that might give us an edge. The ambassador's colors shifted to a deep purple, a Zixan expression of cautious agreement. I will provide what I can. But tread carefully, Captain. The Karkosans do not take kindly to perceived dishonesty. Jensen nodded, his expression grim. We'll tread carefully. But if they think humanity's just going to roll over, they've got another thing coming. As the humans rose to leave, the hulking reptilian figure near the wall shifted slightly, its gaze following them. Rhea's hand drifted to the holstered sidearm at her hip, but she kept her expression neutral. Jensen caught her glance and gave a subtle shake of his head. Let's save the fireworks for later, he murmured. Outside the crater, the pair took in the vibrant sprawl of the neutral zone's capital hub, where neon lights flickered across a tangle of streets and ships streaked fleeting shadows against the hazy sky. This is a bad idea, Rhea said finally, her voice edged with frustration. The Karkosans don't play fair, and we're walking blind into their game. We don't know what we're walking into, and the stakes couldn't be higher. You're not wrong, Jensen admitted. But backing down isn't an option. Not for us. Rhea's expression softened slightly. You ever get tired of carrying the weight of the whole species on your shoulders? He chuckled, though there was little humor in it. Every damn day. But if we don't do it, who will? She didn't have an answer for that, so she simply nodded. Together, they disappeared into the bustling crowd, their minds already racing with plans for the days ahead. The Karkosan flagship loomed in the void, a sprawling fortress of jagged black metal and crimson lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Its silhouette was both intimidating and awe-inspiring, a testament to the sovereignty's reputation for dominance. Jensen and Rhea were escorted aboard by a delegation of Karkosan warriors, each one a towering figure clad in gleaming armor adorned with scars and battle trophies. Their silent stares bore into the humans, each step a reminder of the stakes. The delegation led them to a chamber at the center of the ship. The room was circular, the walls lined with intricate carvings depicting Karkosan victories. In the center, a massive table made of obsidian-like stone glimmered faintly under the harsh lighting. Seated at the table was war leader Goroth, his presence as commanding as the ship itself. His scales shimmered with an almost metallic sheen, and his eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked onto the humans as they approached. His voice, when he spoke, was a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the chamber. Humans, he said, you stand before the sovereignty, seeking to prove your worth. Are you prepared to face the trial? Jensen stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. We are. But we'll face it on our terms, not yours. A ripple of tension passed through the Karkosan warriors, but Goroth's expression remained unreadable. After a moment, he gestured to the table. Then sit. Let us discuss the terms. As the humans took their seats, the true nature of the challenge began to unfold, a gauntlet of tests designed to push their limits in ways no one had anticipated. The Karkosan flagship loomed in the void, a fortress of jagged black metal with crimson lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Its silhouette, jagged and ominous, radiated the sovereignty's dominance with every menacing detail. Jensen and Rhea were escorted aboard by a delegation of Karkosan warriors, towering figures in gleaming armor, their battle-scarred forms radiating menace. Their silent stares bore into the humans, the soft thud of armored boots echoing ominously in the still, heavy air, each step a visceral reminder of the stakes. The delegation led them to a chamber at the center of the ship. The room was circular, the walls lined with intricate carvings depicting Karkosan victories, towering warriors locked in battle with alien beasts, great ships conquering unyielding starfields, and cities forged amid storms of fire and ash, each scene a testament to their brutal history and indomitable spirit. In the center, a massive table made of obsidian-like stone glimmered faintly under the harsh lighting. Seated at the table was war leader Goroth, his presence as commanding as the ship itself. His scales shimmered with an almost metallic sheen, and his eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked onto the humans as they approached. His voice, when he spoke, was a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the chamber. "Humans," he said, "you stand before the sovereignty, seeking to prove your worth. Are you prepared to face the trial?" Jensen stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "We are. But we'll face it on our terms, not yours." A ripple of tension passed through the Karkosan warriors, but Goroth's expression remained unreadable. After a moment, he gestured to the table. "Then sit. Let us discuss the terms." As the humans took their seats, the true nature of the challenge began to unfold, a gauntlet of tests designed to push their limits in ways no one had anticipated. The first trial was one of endurance. Jensen and Rhea found themselves in a chamber that simulated the harsh environment of Karkosa, a death world notorious for its unrelenting storms and gravitational extremes. The temperature veered from searing heat to bone-chilling cold in abrupt waves, while gravity shifted erratically, demanding constant adjustment and straining their endurance. "They're testing our ability to survive in their world," Rhea muttered, her voice strained as she braced herself against the sudden increase in gravity. Sweat dripped from her brow despite the cold blast that followed. Jensen gritted his teeth, his muscles straining under the oppressive weight. "They're trying to break us. But they're underestimating just how stubborn humans can be." The passage of time dragged endlessly, each second stretching into an eternity under the oppressive conditions. The Karkosans observed silently from a raised platform, their expressions inscrutable. Jensen and Rhea relied on each other's presence to endure, exchanging brief glances of encouragement when the strain became almost unbearable. Finally, the environment stabilized, and the chamber's doors slid open. Goroth's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have endured. But endurance alone does not prove worth." The second trial tested their ingenuity. The humans were presented with a complex puzzle, a massive structure of interlocking pieces that needed to be assembled under strict time constraints. The challenge was made even more difficult by the presence of subtle traps and misleading elements designed to throw them off course. Rhea crouched near the base of the structure, her keen eyes scanning the components. "This isn't just about solving the puzzle. They're watching how we work together." Jensen nodded, his focus unbroken as he pieced together a section of the structure. "Then let's show them what we've got." Their movements became a coordinated dance, each relying on the other's strengths to make progress, the faint clink of puzzle pieces and their steady, focused breaths underscoring the intensity of their task. Rhea identified patterns and potential pitfalls, while Jensen used his strength and precision to maneuver the heavier components into place. The Karkosans watched intently, their eyes glinting with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. When the final piece clicked into place, a resonant chime filled the chamber. The structure glowed briefly before disassembling itself, leaving only a faint holographic imprint as proof of their success. Goroth stepped forward, his imposing form casting a long shadow. "You have demonstrated ingenuity and cooperation. But the greatest trial remains." The final trial was a test of resolve. Jensen and Rhea were led to a narrow bridge suspended over a chasm filled with writhing, luminescent tendrils that pulsed with a dangerous energy. On the other side of the bridge was a pedestal holding a small, glowing artifact. The challenge was simple: retrieve the artifact. "Simple my ass," Rhea muttered, eyeing the chasm warily. "That's a death trap if I've ever seen one." Jensen smirked, though his expression was grim. "It's a test of courage. They want to see if we're willing to risk everything." Together, they stepped onto the bridge, each movement deliberate and measured. The tendrils below reacted to their presence, writhing with an almost sentient awareness, their glowing, translucent forms crackling faintly as if charged with a latent energy that made the air hum around them. Halfway across, the bridge shuddered violently, forcing them to cling to the narrow railings. "Keep moving," Jensen shouted over the din. Rhea gritted her teeth and pressed forward, her determination unwavering despite the odds. When they finally reached the pedestal, Jensen grasped the artifact, its surface warm and pulsing with energy. The return journey was even more treacherous, but their resolve never faltered. When they stepped off the bridge, the artifact in hand, Gorath stood waiting. His gaze was inscrutable, but there was a subtle shift in his posture, a recognition of their achievement. "You have faced the trials," he said, his voice heavy with gravity. "And you have proven that humanity is not to be underestimated." Jensen and Rhea exchanged a glance, a shared sense of triumph tempered by exhaustion. They had faced the Sovereignty's harshest tests and emerged not just as survivors, but as equals in the eyes of the galaxy's most formidable warriors. The Karkosan's final proclamation reverberated through the flagship as preparations for the greatest trial began. Jensen and Rhea were granted a brief reprieve, escorted to a stark chamber with only the barest of amenities. The walls hummed faintly, radiating an uneasy energy that prickled at their skin and sank into their bones, leaving an almost numbing ache that made every breath feel heavy. "Not exactly the luxury suite," Rhea muttered, collapsing onto the slab that served as a bed. Her exhaustion was palpable, but her tone carried a sharp edge of defiance. "So, what's the play, Jensen? Are we walking into a trap?" Jensen leaned against the wall, his face shadowed in the dim light. "A trap? Definitely. But we've already committed. The question is how we spring it without breaking." Their conversation was cut short by the abrupt arrival of a Karkosan guard. It gestured sharply, its jagged armor catching the light. The final trial awaits. The arena they were led to was unlike anything they'd encountered, its air cool and thick with a faint metallic tang that clung to their senses. It was colossal, a cavernous chamber encased in an energy field that shimmered faintly in the low light. Karkosan warriors and delegates filled the upper galleries, their predatory gazes fixed on the humans as a low murmur rippled through the crowd, blending with the faint crackle of the arena's energy field. The air buzzed with anticipation and a tension so thick it was nearly suffocating. In the center of the arena stood an object of sheer, alien complexity, a monolithic structure composed of shifting, interconnected components. It seemed to defy geometry, its angles and edges warping subtly as if alive. Rhea's sharp intake of breath mirrored Jensen's reaction. "Let me guess," Rhea said dryly. "We're supposed to figure that out." War leader Goratha's voice boomed across the chamber. "This is the trial of dominion. It is the ultimate test of unity and will. You must tame the labyrinth. Command its chaos. Fail, and you are unworthy." Jensen exchanged a glance with Rhea. "Tame the labyrinth. Easy, right?" Her expression was grim, but determination flickered in her eyes. "Piece of cake." They approached the monolith, its surface shifting in response to their proximity. As their hands brushed against the structure, it pulsed with energy, and the arena plunged into near-total darkness. Only the monolith's faint glow illuminated the space around them, casting eerie, shifting shadows that danced along the walls and lent an otherworldly tension to the darkness. The labyrinth was a living enigma. Each move they made seemed to alter its configuration. Pathways appeared and vanished, the shifting surfaces reflecting distorted images of the pair, stretched and fragmented like shards of broken glass, their features twisting into uncanny echoes that seemed to mock their every move. Every step was a gamble, every decision a test of their resolve and ingenuity. "It's trying to split us up," Jensen noted as one pathway closed off, separating them briefly before Rhea managed to leap to his side. "That's not happening," Rhea said firmly. "We're in this together." Navigating the labyrinth required more than just intellect, it demanded trust and synchronicity. They developed a rhythm, a wordless communication born from shared purpose. Jensen's strength allowed him to manipulate heavier components, while Rhea's sharp instincts uncovered hidden mechanisms. Each success brought them closer to the heart of the labyrinth, where the air grew dense with an almost oppressive energy that pressed against their chests, making each breath shallow and their movements heavier with every step. But the labyrinth fought back. The paths grew more treacherous, with sudden bursts of energy erupting like bolts of lightning, forcing them to dive aside or frantically adjust their route to avoid being caught in the crackling arcs. At one point, a surge of light blinded Jensen, leaving him vulnerable until Rhea's quick thinking saved them both. "Don't go dying on me now," she said, her tone attempting levity but betraying genuine concern. "Not planning to," Jensen replied, his voice steadier than he felt. At last, they reached the labyrinth's core, a pulsating sphere of raw energy suspended in the air, its surface flickering with incomprehensible patterns. The atmosphere here was suffused with an almost tangible pressure, as though the entire arena were holding its breath. "What now?" Rhea asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of the sphere. Jensen's gaze was fixed on the core. "We finish this." Together, they placed their hands on the sphere. It resisted, its surface crackling with energy that surged up their arms. Pain seared through them, but they didn't let go. Slowly, the sphere began to respond, its chaotic patterns stabilizing under their combined will. The labyrinth shuddered violently, and for a moment, it seemed as though it might collapse entirely. Then, with a final, blinding flash, the sphere dissolved. The labyrinth's shifting walls stilled, their constant grinding and echoing halting abruptly. A profound silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of dissipating energy as light returned to the arena, flooding the chamber with a sudden, almost blinding clarity. A stunned silence filled the chamber, followed by an eruption of sound, thunderous roars of approval from some Karkosans, while others hissed and growled in disbelief, their voices clashing in a chaotic symphony. Some Karkosans roared in approval, others murmured in disbelief. War leader Goroth descended into the arena, his gaze piercing. He stopped before Jensen and Rhea, his imposing form dwarfing them. "You have tamed the labyrinth," he said, his voice heavy with respect. "Few have achieved what you have. Humanity has proven its mettle." Jensen met his gaze, unflinching. "We're not just survivors. We're builders, explorers, and allies. This trial was never just about us. It's about what we can achieve together." Goroth inclined his head, a rare gesture of acknowledgement. "The sovereignty recognizes your worth. Let it be known that humanity stands among the worthy." As the arena's energy field dissipated, Jensen and Rhea allowed themselves a moment of relief. Their bodies ached, their minds reeled, but they had done what many thought impossible. The galaxy's harshest critics now saw them as equals and perhaps, as something more, pioneers of a new era, where resilience and unity could reshape interstellar alliances. The sovereignty's flagship, once a towering emblem of unyielding dominance, now bore an air of subdued respect. Jensen and Rhea, resolute despite their exhaustion, were escorted back to the diplomatic chambers, their shoulders drooping under the weight of fatigue, but their eyes still burning with determination. The silence between them carried the gravity of their shared ordeal, an unspoken understanding forged in the crucible of their trials. Waiting for them was Ambassador Nicola, his translucent form radiating hues of deep violet and pale green that shimmered subtly under the room's lighting, the interplay of colors evoking a quiet yet dynamic sense of cautious optimism. As they entered, Nicola inclined his body slightly in a gesture of respect unusual for his kind. "It seems humanity has once again defied expectations," Nicola said, his voice a blend of admiration and curiosity. "The sovereignty's acknowledgement of your worth is no small feat. You've done more than survive, you've secured humanity's place among the stars." Jensen leaned against the edge of a table, his shoulders sagging and his face lined with exhaustion, the faint tremor in his hands betraying the toll of the trials. "It wasn't about proving we're strong," he said. "It was about proving we're not afraid to stand for something bigger than ourselves." Rhea nodded, her gaze steady. The labyrinth wasn't just a test of skill or endurance. It was a mirror. It showed us what we're made of, not just to them but to ourselves. Nicola's colors shifted to a warm blue, a sign of approval in Zixan culture, symbolizing not only acceptance but also a readiness to foster trust and cooperation. "And what did you see?" Rhea smiled faintly. "That humanity doesn't quit. No matter how many times the odds are stacked against us." Before Nicola could reply, the chamber doors slid open with a low, resonant hiss, revealing War Leader Goroth. The faint scrape of his armored steps echoed as he entered, commanding attention with each deliberate stride. He strode in with the same commanding presence that had dominated the arena, but this time there was no hostility in his posture, only purpose. "Captain Jensen." "Lieutenant Rhea," Goroth began, his deep voice resonating in the room. "The sovereignty has deliberated. We recognize humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and unity. These are not traits we acknowledge lightly. But now, They are traits we respect. Jensen straightened, his shoulders squaring as he locked eyes with Gorath, the resolve in his expression tempered by a quiet confidence that spoke of hard-earned respect. Respect is earned, war leader. And so is trust. Gorath's scaled face shifted slightly, a Karkosan approximation of a smile. Indeed. Trust will take time, but the foundation has been laid. Humanity has a place among the worthy. And the sovereignty will honor its alliance. A weight lifted from the room, and Rhea exhaled slowly, relief softening her features. Then let this be the start of something better, she said. Not just for humanity, but for everyone. Gorath inclined his head. So be it. Hours later, aboard their ship, Jensen and Rhea stood in the observation deck, watching as the Sovereignty's flagship grew smaller in the distance. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, its silent void shimmering with infinite potential, each star a beacon of uncharted futures. Do you think this changes anything? Rhea asked quietly, her voice thoughtful. Jensen considered her question, his gaze fixed on the stars. It changes everything, he said. Not just for us, but for how the galaxy sees us. They'll remember this day. And so will we. She nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. Every species still tells stories about the day the Deathworlders decided to stop being nice. Jensen chuckled, the sound low but genuine. And every story starts somewhere. Let's make sure ours is worth telling. As the stars shifted around them, the ship hummed to life, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to echo their own determination. The viewport's glass shimmered faintly as streaks of light stretched and twisted, marking their journey into the boundless expanse of possibilities. Together, they had faced the galaxy's harshest trial and emerged not just as representatives of Earth but as architects of a new chapter for humanity, one defined by courage, unity, and the unshakable resolve to forge their destiny among the stars.